Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
The search for 33-year-old Nicole Montalvo continues from last week's episode. The last time anyone had seen Nicole alive was at the home of her in-laws, Angel and Wanda Rivera, when she dropped off her son. Florida's Osceola County Sheriff's Office was investigating a narrative that didn't seem to fit into reality. Nicole appeared to text her father-in-law that she made a mistake and was heading out of town unexpectedly, without a reason why, without any indication of who she was with or when she would return. Now, Nicole was not the kind of person to just skip work or abandon her 8-year-old son, the most important person in her life. She was going through a divorce and had been a victim of domestic violence at the hands of her estranged husband. But at the time of her disappearance, Nicole was optimistic about her life ahead, excited for her new apartment, had plans with her son, and was quietly dating someone new. Why would she just run away from all of that? The answer? She wouldn't. In part 1, I covered the investigation thus far into Nicole's disappearance. Today, we'll get into what happened to her and who exactly was responsible.
And as she drove out to the Rivera residence with the love of her life, her son, Elijah, the day seemed bright. She didn't know that that drive would result in her mangled and mutilated body ending up there.
This is Jillian, and in partnership with Law and Crime, you are listening to Court Junkie, episode 169, part 2. On the Thursday after Nicole disappeared, the Osceola County Sheriff's Office obtained the first search warrant to begin the deeper search on the Rivera property in rural St. Cloud, Florida. With 5 acres to explore, crime scene technicians moved in and divided it up into 6 quadrants. Cadaver dogs roamed the land, not finding any sense at first. There was plenty to cover: the house, a wooden structure, a metal shop where the Riveras worked, an RV, trailers, multiple vehicles, and scrap metal. During a pretrial hearing, the prosecutor asked the lead detective, Cole Miller, if it almost looked like a junkyard back there. Absolutely, Detective Miller responded. One area in the back of the property stood out. There was a heavy steel trailer with a chain-link fence piled on top of it. It looked suspicious, almost staged. According to Sergeant Robert Alderman, who operated an excavator to help with the search, quote, "It looked to me like all that stuff had been moved, and the trailer moved, and then all that stuff put back on top of the trailer, and then the trailer pulled back to where it was sitting at. When we looked underneath the trailer, there were clumps of dirt, and you could tell that there was a fresh dug hole there, and it had been covered back up. Because the roots of the grass were exposed and the blades of the grass were still green, so grass won't stay like that for a period of time." What also caught their attention was fresh dirt marks and tread marks nearby. Detective Miller said, quote, "The totality of everything there, with the marks from the tractor, the excavator, the disruption of the soil, it was a lighter colored soil, which out there it didn't match. And then there was, conveniently, a trailer placed on top of it." Sergeant Alderman moved the trailer, the fencing, and the debris, and then the digging began with the excavator. carefully inch by inch, removing the dirt while a dozen employees from the sheriff's office watched to see what appeared below. The sergeant didn't need to dig deep. Less than 5 feet down, a hit. There was flesh, rotting flesh, a scent Sergeant Alderman could immediately identify from working other cases at the sheriff's office in his tenure. The smell started permeating from the ground. Once we started disturbing it, when we started moving the dirt around in the first whatever we found initially, when the smell started, then the blowflies started coming, Sergeant Alderman said. It meant one thing: decomposition. Investigators created a quadrant over the area of interest and continued to dig with hand shovels and by hand. Whatever they found was bagged in a biohazard container. You would agree that this area is rural, so it was almost impossible to determine whether that piece of flesh or muscle or whatever it was human or animal remains, correct? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Detective Miller agreed. I couldn't tell you what it was at that time. They needed more confirmation. The medical examiner's office would eventually give it. What the investigators dug up were burnt human organs, pieces of heart with human tissue and skin. The remains would later be identified as Nicole's. Have you seen my excavator? An employee from Rental World was in the area of the Rivera home on October 26th, 5 days after Nicole was last seen. He was looking to reclaim the piece of heavy equipment that Angel Rivera, Nicole's father-in-law, had rented on October 19th, 2 days prior to Nicole's disappearance. He had yet to return it. The employee asked neighbors, and word had gotten back to the sheriff's investigators. 2 neighbors remembered seeing the rented excavator on nearby Henry J. Avenue by a piece of property that was usually quiet and that people rarely visited. The parcel of land was about half a mile away from the Rivera's house and was registered in the name of Angel and Wanda's other son, Nicholas Rivera. Law enforcement's attention turned to the Henry J. Avenue land, and officials executed a second search warrant on October 27th. There were signs the property had been freshly disturbed. The search grew. More cadaver dogs, more excavation, and more grisly discoveries. What they found on the Henry J. site: Nicole's severed head, her feet, and her hands. In her 15-year career, Dr. Jennifer Nara had done about 4,000 autopsies. On October 26, 2019, she started Nicole's. Dr. Nara testified that this wasn't a normal case.
Was the autopsy in this case of Nicole Montalvo typical in the sense that you went through the process as you normally would?
I would not say it was typical.
Okay, can you explain to the members of the jury what was atypical about it?
What was atypical is normally we would receive the deceased with, a chart or information about their history. This decedent came in multiple parts, so I happened to be working on the weekend when I was brought several red biohazard bags with possibly human remains that they wanted me to look at. So it's definitely not typical.
Have you performed autopsies on dismembered bodies or decedents in the past?
Yes, I have.
During the course of your, I believe you said 16 or 15-year career?
15.
15-year career. Had you ever encountered the level of dismemberment that you encountered in this case?
No.
She analyzed the burnt skin and organs discovered buried in the ground by law enforcement. The jury saw photographs of what she had examined. She described for the jury what they were looking at, like a right lung that would normally be pink and soft, but in the autopsy, it was completely charred and burned, almost in its entirety, she said. She would later say it was most likely Nicole was already dead when her body was burned in a fire. The charring and the dismemberment were not the causes of the death, she testified. She said she couldn't determine how or when Nicole had been killed. She described Nicole's remains as decomposing.
How did you go about separating what we just saw and analyzing it as a whole? Can you describe that for the jury, please?
Sure. Since this is an unusual case where the body didn't come intact, I just started, once I was able to identify the different portions of the body, we cleaned each part off, and then I tried to put them together in the anatomical location as much as possible, such as like the left and right hands and the feet, pieces of the bone. To the best of my ability, I was able to try to reconstruct what I could of a human being.
Dr. Nara testified that Nicole's bones had been fragmented and appeared to have gone through a wood chipper. Her dismembered head had been burned, her hair singed. Her hands were discolored, which could possibly be defensive wounds on the knuckles and the fingers, or it could just be decomposition. It was impossible for Dr. Nara to know for sure which one. Another part of the body, Dr. Nara couldn't determine which part, looked like it had stab wounds. She couldn't tell if they were inflicted while Nicole was alive or dead.
Doctor, you told us earlier that determining cause and manner of death is one of your primary roles. What impact, if any, did the dismemberment of Nicole Montalvo's body and its state when you received it have on your ability to reach more specific conclusions about those two topics?
Since the body was not received intact, I was not able to assess any specific injury, trauma, and also was the body not intact. It had been burned and it was decomposing, had been let to sit out to rot for a while. So that definitely affected my ability to come up with a specific cause of death.
And so Nicole's cause of death was ruled homicidal violence of unspecified means. The manner of death was homicide. Investigators obtained a warrant to search the phone belonging to Nicholas Rivera, Chris's brother. On Nicholas's phone, they found multiple images of child pornography and arrested him on November 1st, 2019. Facing his own legal troubles now, Nicholas agreed to speak with the sheriff's detectives. Perhaps he could help their now murder investigation. According to the sheriff's investigative report, Nicholas described coming home early from work in the afternoon on Monday, October 21st. He noticed Nicole's Honda parked in the garage. Nicholas went inside and became absorbed in an argument with Wanda about her drinking habits, while Angel, Chris, and Nicole were in the garage. A few minutes later, he stepped outside and went to join the others. He saw Nicole laying on the floor of the garage, blood pooling by her neck. She was motionless. The family never talked about what happened. There was a code of silence. He said Wanda told Nicholas to leave immediately, and as he left, he saw his father drive Nicole's car away. Nicholas returned home, and later that evening, he remembered Angel driving the rented excavator back and forth, from the front of the property to the back. When Nicholas went to sleep that night, a noise woke him up around 2 or 3 a.m. It was Angel, washing off an orange push cart near the outside garage workshop. Later, the sheriff's office tested the cart and found signs of blood that matched Nicole's. However, DNA analysis on blood found on the garage floor wasn't from Nicole. Could Nicholas's story of having seen her dead on the garage floor be trusted? Nicole's family gathered to say goodbye to her at a funeral home in Kissimmee, Florida, at the end of 2019. In her obituary, Nicole was remembered as someone who loved rooting for the Philadelphia Eagles and who had an affinity for junk food and going to the beach as a born and raised Floridian. But the thing Nicole loved the most was her son. Nicole loved her son Elijah more than anything, her obituary read. She loved dressing up for Halloween with Elijah. She taught Elijah to love ketchup and ranch dressing so they could put it on everything. Nicole and Elijah loved to make cupcakes for school and for his classmates. Nicole took so many photos of Elijah and herself that her phone was always full. Nicole's laugh was very distinctive, and Elijah has the same one that we love to hear. Nicole always worked hard to provide the best life for Elijah and for herself. Elijah made her full of life. She loved him so much. Nicole Montalvo's death was gruesome, and there was physical evidence like video surveillance, GPS coordinates, and phone records, alongside eyewitness accounts from neighbors, a teacher, a renter, and others. Angel and Chris were both arrested in late October. Although months later, they still had not been formally charged for Nicole's murder by the state attorney's office. They were being held in jail on other charges. Meanwhile, a public feud was starting to brew between the Orange Osceola state attorney, Aramis Ayala, and the Osceola County Sheriff, Russ Gibson. The sheriff accused the state attorney of hindering his investigation. He wrote a letter to the governor, Ron DeSantis, accusing State Attorney Ayala of directing her staff not to assist detectives in obtaining evidence from the suspect's phones or testimony from a key witness. The feud between the sheriff and the state attorney's office had escalated over the punishment for the defendants, even though there still had yet to be a trial. Sheriff Gibson was advocating publicly for the death penalty. State Attorney Ayala was a staunch advocate against capital punishment. Sheriff Gibson asked Governor DeSantis to remove the state attorney from the case. Here's part of what he wrote, according to the Orlando Sentinel. Quote, "It became painfully obvious that the state attorney was unhappy with my comments regarding the death penalty, and she asked me to stop making public comments regarding the death penalty. At that time, she also indicated to us that the state attorney's office would not be seeking a first-degree murder indictment. Until that meeting, my detectives believed, based on conversations with the assigned prosecutor, that charges would be filed." At the same time, the state attorney was angry that the sheriff's office arrested Angel and Chris before her office was ready to actually charge the family. She pointed out that a major question was left unanswered in the sheriff's murder investigation. Who actually killed Nicole? Was it Angel or was it Chris? State Attorney Ayala held a press conference to air out her grievances, accusing the sheriff's office of rushing the arrests.
We advise the sheriff against arresting because the moment an arrest occurs, our time is limited to bring the killer to justice. I want to make this point very clear. Without an arrest, there are no time constraints, no clocks are ticking. Had the sheriff followed the advice and listened to my office, we would have an unlimited amount of time to gather sufficient evidence for a successful prosecution and conviction, which is exactly what Nicole and her family deserves. Without an arrest, speedy trial is not an issue. There is no statute of limitations in this case. We would be able to get the evidence 20 years from now if it became available, but now that time is limited. The sheriff blatantly ignored our advice not to arrest in this case. Instead, prior to being able to provide admissible evidence regarding the manner of death and who actually killed Nicole Montalvo, which are both required to file charges and to prosecute, he chose to go on television to say that he was going to ask for the death penalty in this case. Not only was it out of order, it was disingenuous. It is my understanding that as we stand here today, the sheriff still does not know who actually killed Nicole Montalvo.
Governor DeSantis intervened and reassigned the case to a different state attorney's office from Ocala, Florida.
Nicole Montalvo deserves justice. She was brutally murdered and had been treated horribly for many years prior to her being killed. Now, I did not, as governor, seek any involvement in this case. This case has effectively been thrust upon me. And while incredibly powerful circumstantial evidence exists in the case, no charges have been filed. The Osceola County Sheriff and the state attorney have been feuding. The Attorney General of Florida has reviewed the case and expressed concern that it will not be successfully prosecuted. And the Montalvo family has been left wondering whether justice will be served. Now, I've reviewed letters from both Attorney General Moody as well as Sheriff Russ Gibson. I've also reviewed the facts of the case and facts pertaining to the conduct of the investigation. And it's my determination that the ends of justice will be best served by reassigning this case to State Attorney Brad King of the 5th Judicial Circuit. At the end of the day, this is not about a particular sheriff or state attorney or governor. This is about Nicole and her memory. She cannot speak for herself, and so we as Floridians need to ensure that justice is done on her behalf.
More than a month later, a grand jury indicted 33-year-old Christopher Otero Rivera and his father, 64-year-old Angel Rivera, just before a deadline passed that could have freed the two men. Charged with second-degree murder, abuse of a body, and evidence tampering in her death, Chris and Angel headed to trial in early April 2021. Earlier, the sheriff's office had obtained an arrest warrant for Wanda Rivera for lying during a criminal investigation. Wanda had asked someone to contact Rental World to help get rid of the excavator at the Henry J. property once Nicole's disappearance was getting widespread attention. So the sheriff's office added a charge of tampering with evidence to Wanda's arrest warrant, according to sheriff's investigative reports. Authorities also suspected that Wanda had helped abandon Nicole's car. But in March 2021, prosecutors dropped Wanda's charges, telling the media the case against her was circumstantial. Assistant State Attorney Ryan Williams was explicit with the jury as opening statements began. The state would not be able to say how Nicole died, nor could they say exactly when she died or where on the Rivera property she was killed. And the jury wouldn't get to hear any eyewitnesses coming forward who saw Angel or Chris commit the crime.
But we are going to present you with overwhelming evidence of who, how, and why. I want to be clear that at some point during, if not multiple points, during the presentation of evidence, you will be shocked. You will be shocked by the photos that you see. You will be shocked by the nature of the crime that those photos tell the story of. But ladies and gentlemen, you will not be surprised. By the time the evidence in this case closes, it will be clear to you that Angel Rivera and his son Christopher Otero Rivera are the only two men with the motive, opportunity, and means to kill Nicole Montalvo in October of 2019.
Both Chris and Angel's defense strategies at trial was to turn on each other. Chris's defense attorney was quick to blame Nicole's death on Angel during their opening statements.
Angel is the last person to see Nicole Montalvo alive. He's an interesting figure in this case. He is the father of Christopher, grandfather to Elijah, which is Nicole and Christopher's son. And he had a very big control issue with Elijah. You're going to hear evidence of that. You're going to hear that he treated Elijah like his possession. He was unquestionably the boss of the Rivera family. He controlled things, he manipulated things and people, and he was ultimately what you would refer to as the master of the house. Everyone in that home, you'll hear, was scared of Angel Rivera, and that includes Wanda and his 2 sons.
Chris's attorney, Kim LaSure, said Angel inserted himself as the most influential person in Elijah's life and that he controlled the boy.
You'll hear Christopher didn't challenge that overbearing role, but someone else did. And that was Nicole Montalvo.
LaSure said the circumstantial evidence was compelling against only one person, Angel. She pointed out how Angel was also the one caught operating the excavator.
So if there's any compelling circumstantial evidence in this case, ladies and gentlemen, it was Angel. He had the motive. He had, most importantly, the anger and the opportunity.
Angel's attorney, Frank Bankowitz, however, argued that it was Chris who was responsible for Nicole's death. Bankowitz declined to give an opening statement, but in his closing arguments, he argued it was Chris who benefited the most with Nicole out of the picture. Christopher Otero Rivera stood to gain substantially because he's the father of the child, he said. If she's dead, he gets custody all to himself. The jury listened to testimony from investigators, the medical examiner, and people who knew Chris and Angel. Grattan Hayward, an investigator with the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, collected traffic surveillance video along the routes from the Rivera home on Hickson Avenue to where Nicole's car was found. A silver pickup truck that appears to be Angel's can be seen at 6:35 p.m., passing a business on the way to the area where her car was found. At 7:11 p.m., it can be seen heading back along the same route. A cell tower report from Angel's phone matches the times on the surveillance video. Nicholas Rivera, Angel and Wanda's other son, also took the stand at trial. Earlier, he had told investigators that he had come home from a break during his work hours and saw Nicole laying on the floor of the garage, blood pooled around her head. Angel and Chris were standing over her. But on the stand, Nicholas didn't recall taking a break from work that day. He was shown his prior statement to police and said he still doesn't recall.
Starting page 128, line 11. Question. Do you have a regularly scheduled dinner break? Answer from Mr. Rivera. Yes. Question. When is that? Answer. Usually it's around 3 to 4. Question. 3 to 4? Answer. Yes. Question. Was it 3 to 4 this particular day on Monday, October 21st? Answer. Yes. Do you know if you went home on your lunch break on October 21st of 2019?
Don't believe so.
He was asked if he remembers what time he got home from work. He said he doesn't, but that usually it's between 10:30 or 11:30 at night.
Did you go to sleep in your room when you got home? At some point that night, did you hear something that woke you out of your sleep?
I believe so, yes.
Right? Do you remember what the noise was or what it sounded like that woke you up?
I don't remember what it sounded like, no.
Okay. What did you do when you heard this noise that woke you up?
I had gone outside.
All right. What route did you take through your house to get outside?
Through the sliding back door.
All right. Did you go to the front of your house or the back of your house?
The back.
All right. What did you see when you got outside?
I just remember seeing my father.
You're going to have to speak up.
I remember seeing my father.
And what was he doing?
I believe he was washing something.
Okay. With a hose or something else?
I believe the hose, yes.
Okay. Do you remember the something that he was washing?
Not really, no.
The prosecutor showed him a photo of a cart. Nicholas said it was kept in the building in the back of his house on Henry J. Avenue. When asked if that's what he saw his father washing, he said, "I believe so." On cross, Angel's attorney asked him if other people in the household drove his father's truck.
Mr. Rivera, regarding this truck, isn't it true that your mother drove the truck occasionally?
I'm not sure.
What about your brother? Excuse me?
Possibly.
But you drove it occasionally, right?
Yes.
John Hall Jr. lives in St. Cloud near the Riveras. He testified that he was driving home one day and saw someone digging on the property near his.
One person, multiple people, or do you recall?
There were multiple people there.
Were they digging by hand or using some sort of equipment?
A Yanmar miniature excavator.
Okay. How would you know that it's a Yanmar miniature excavator?
I worked for a towing company for many years, and we moved a lot of heavy equipment around, and I've had experience operating them and using them around my property and other properties.
Well, I'll ask a more simple question. Does that excavator have the word Yanmar written on it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What color is it?
Bright yellow.
Had you ever seen an excavator like that on that property before?
No, sir.
A few days later, he saw something else.
My wife and children and I were going down to get fruits and vegetables from the Mint Farms, and we were driving my mule. It's like a side-by-side UTV, and I saw excavator tire tracks at the corner of Hickson and Deer Run.
Why would those excavator tracks get your attention as opposed to anything else you see every day?
It was just odd that normally, because an excavator doesn't move very fast, you put it on a trailer to move it from property to property. You don't track it down the side of the road.
He testified that he then saw news reports about the sheriff's office digging over on Hickson Avenue. He remembered that he had seen those unidentified people digging close by on Henry J. Avenue, and so he decided to do some investigative work himself and look up who the owner of that property was. Then, on Saturday, October 26th, he observed something else.
I was sitting in what we call the family room of my house, and I saw a Rental World heavy truck, flatbed truck, drive past my house.
What road was it headed on? If you can show us on the map, that'd be great. You need me to show it to you again? I can.
The truck was traveling east on Oakwood towards Henry J.
Right? And you said it was Rental World. Do you know what Rental World is?
Yes, sir.
What type of business is Rental World?
Rental World's a rental company. They rent anything from floor scrapers to heavy equipment to chainsaws. They rent all kinds of stuff. They have a location in St. Cloud and Kissimmee.
He said he found the fact that the Rental World truck driving over there unusual. It was normally just himself or another neighbor who would order something from there, and he knew they hadn't. He called the police and told them what he had uncovered. On cross, he said he couldn't identify the people he saw digging. Gary Guthrie lives off Henry J. Avenue with his wife. He said he has seen Angel around the neighborhood before, mostly at the local store, or when they would wave to each other when one would drive by. On the week of October 21st, on that Monday or Tuesday between 3:30 and 4:30 p.m., he said he saw something that stood out to him.
So what was it that you saw the defendant Angel Rivera doing the week of October 21st that you notified law enforcement about?
Well, I was on my way home from work, and as I pulled onto my road, he was in front of me on this machine, a little excavator.
Yes, sir.
And he looked back at me and waved. I waved back to him. And, normal stuff.
Can you describe the excavator?
Yeah, it was a little yellow, black one.
He said Angel was stopped at his gate when he pulled into his property. He went inside, got a beer, and walked back out onto his porch. He could see all the commotion and hear the beep, beep, beep from the excavator. At around 5 p.m., he saw a pickup truck drive by and go to the property where the excavator was. The truck then left and drove by again. He couldn't see who was inside, but said whoever it was waved, and he waved back. Kevin St. Jakes is also a neighbor of the Riveras. He testified that he first met Angel when he stopped by his house to see if he had any scrap metal. He would then come by about every 2 or 3 months. July or August of 2019 was one of those times.
During this conversation, did Angel make any specific statements about Christopher's wife that concerned you enough that you called someone and told them about it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. As he stood there in the moment and made the statement, were you concerned in that moment?
Not at the moment.
Okay. As you thought about it later, is that when you became concerned?
That's correct.
Right.
It was enough that I called my sister in Massachusetts.
And when I say later, is that the same day, that evening?
That was that evening.
Right. What was it that Angel said that ultimately concerned you?
He offered me some money to kill that woman.
And when he offered you the money, do you recall how much money he offered you?
$10,000.
And were you all talking about Christopher's wife when he made this offer?
At the time, yes.
On cross with Angel's attorney, he said at the time Angel made that statement, he was venting and was mad. He said Angel never followed up on it, never offered any description of what exactly he wanted, and never actually gave him any money to do it. Aaron Riveras is a former Florida Department of Corrections officer. He told the court that in the summer of 2019, he was supervising Chris while he was on home confinement from his battery conviction after assaulting Nicole the year before. He said how it worked was that on a weekly basis, Chris would have to go into his office with a schedule he planned on following for that week. Riveras would then approve or deny any requests he had to leave his home. Chris would then be randomly checked on throughout the week to make sure he was where he was supposed to be. On Wednesday, October 23, 2019, 2 days after Nicole was last seen, he received a request to go to the Rivera property and check on Elijah. They pulled up and Chris walked over to them. He was standing in the street talking to Chris when Angel approached, walking southbound on Hickson.
Walking on foot up to your group.
Yes.
Right? And you say southbound down the road.
Yes.
Right? Did he speak to you at that point about where he had been or what he was doing?
He said he was on his morning walk.
He told the court their office sets up something called an inclusion zone, with parameters the person must follow. If someone steps outside the inclusion zone, they would be notified immediately, unless it had been approved beforehand. Ardrana Weatherspoon had taken over for Aaron Riveras after he was promoted in early October 2019. She testified that she was supervising Chris at the time of Nicole's disappearance. On October 15th, the week prior, Chris requested for her to expand his inclusion zone.
And did he say why he wanted his inclusion zone expanded?
Yes, he mentioned that he does yard work with his dad, and when he works out in the property, it gets an alarm.
So the first time he asked you for that was October 15th?
Yes.
She visited his home on October 19th. He revisited that request with her.
Did you end up expanding the GPS or the inclusion zone at that point?
No.
On cross with Chris's attorney, Weatherspoon said that when she got there on the 19th, Chris was working in the yard with his dad. She said he never violated any of his conditions, meaning he never stepped outside the inclusion zone. Although he didn't go anywhere he wasn't supposed to with his ankle monitor, the GPS tracking did show that he was in the back of the property and even near where Nicole's remains were eventually found. According to the GPS on the excavator was there at those same times. Then later, the excavator traveled to the Henry J. property, where the rest of the remains were later found. 2 water bottles were retrieved from the excavator, both with DNA profiles that included Angel as a possible contributor. Deputy Robert Hansel Jr. testified about the prior incident where Nicole pressed charges against Chris and his then-girlfriend Tony for attacking her. He described first seeing Nicole when he responded to her home.
So did you physically lay eyes on Nicole Montalvo when you got to the house?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe her demeanor when you arrived?
She appeared to have been crying or was crying at the time, was very upset. She had some physical, red in the face, swelling, bloody lip, dried blood, and stuff like that.
Did you notice anything about her clothing?
Yes, sir. She was wearing a black t-shirt or a black button-up shirt, had a rip on the side, and it was unable to be rebuttoned. It was ripped up.
So despite the fact that other members of law enforcement had been there for a while, she still had this appearance, the puffiness and everything else that you just described?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Rivera, are you married to Angel Rivera?
Yes.
And how long have you been married?
Almost 35 years.
Prosecutors called Wanda Rivera, Angel's wife and Chris's mother, to the stand to testify about everything she knew about Nicole's disappearance and subsequent death. She told the court that at the time, Angel drove a silver truck, a truck she could never drive because it's a stick shift. Chris didn't have a car, and Angel would take him to his appointments. She said Angel and Chris would work in the back area by the shop on the property on a regular basis. They would repair cars, take apart refrigerators, work with scrap metal and car parts, things like that. They spent a lot of time together there, in fact. That's where they spent most of their time. Neither Chris nor Angel had a job in October 2019. Wanda told the jury that she and Nicole would call and text each other often. She would hear from her almost every day. On Monday, October 21st, she said she spoke with Nicole in the morning. Nicole called her as she was getting ready for work. She remembered handing the phone over to Angel so Angel could talk to her. She could overhear some of their conversation. She said she believes she heard Angel say, "I'll take Elijah to school." The prosecutor was quick to ask her if that's what she had said in a statement to police.
Do you recall being asked, did you hear the conversation between Nicole and Angel about him dropping her at school, and answering no because I kept getting myself ready for work?
I'm sorry?
Do you recall being asked, did you hear the conversation between Nicole and Angel about him dropping her at school, and answering no because I kept getting myself ready for work?
That's what I said.
Okay.
She said she spoke with Nicole again around 4 p.m. as she was driving home from work. Nicole sounded normal and gave no indication that she was planning on leaving town. It was a brief conversation, she said. She testified that she can't recall it now, but in her grand jury statement, she said Chris had opened the gate for her when she pulled up to their home. She guessed it was about 5:15 or 5:30, the normal time she would arrive home. When asked if she saw any vehicles parked at the house that weren't theirs, she said no. She was asked if she saw Nicholas's car, and she said no, she believes he was working that night. When she got inside the house, she saw Elijah in the living room.
When you got home on October 21st, 2019, you said between 5:15 and 5:30, did you see Nicole?
No.
Did you see Nicole's car?
I don't think so. I know. I said no, because my car pulled right in. No, I didn't see her car.
She was asked if Nicole's car had been parked in the back of the metal shop on the property, would she have seen it? And she said no. She was asked when she first saw Angel that night, and she said she isn't sure. The prosecutor showed her a prior statement she had given. She read it, but said it only says that most likely she saw him, but she doesn't remember if she saw him that evening or not.
So you can't say with any certainty that you saw him in the house before you got Elijah bathed into bed. Is that accurate?
I believe so.
All right. Well, you believe so. Do you have a recollection of seeing him in the house before that on October 21st, 2019?
I don't remember.
As for Chris, she said that except for him opening the gate for her, she doesn't remember. She was asked if the following morning, on October 22nd, she remembers seeing Angel then when she woke up. She said she doesn't remember. She was asked if she recalled an excavator being delivered to the house on Saturday the 19th, 2 days prior to Nicole's disappearance. She said yes.
When was the first time you learned that an excavator was going to be delivered? Was it when you saw it arriving?
No, maybe a couple of days. Either I can remember, I'm sorry, either a couple of days before it arrived or that day it arrived.
All right. Did you see Angel or Chris outside when the excavator was being delivered that Saturday?
Yes.
All right. And which one?
Definitely Angel was out there.
The prosecutor asked if looking at her prior statement would refresh her recollection, and she said yes. She looked at her statement and then testified, it was Angel and Chris. As for whether she ever saw anyone other than Angel operating the excavator, she said no. She said she believes she saw him on it on Sunday, October 20th. She said she heard on the news that Nicole's remains were found on their property, but as for how they ended up there, she said she doesn't know. The prosecutor asked if anyone else had access to their gated property with their German Shepherd.
Let me rephrase it. Did anyone else have regular permission to be on your property besides you, Christopher, Angel, Nicholas, and the two tenants?
No.
If a stranger were to have come onto the property on Hickson, you would have known.
Yes.
She was then asked about Angel's whereabouts during the time Nicole went missing.
As you sit here right now, can you say for certain where Angel was or what he was doing on October 21st between the time you got home and when he finally came to bed after dark?
No, I don't remember.
Can you say for certain, as you sit here right now, where Christopher was or what he was doing, again, on October 21st, between the time you got home and dark? Can you say what he was doing?
No.
On cross-examination with Chris's attorney, Wanda said she and Angel would see Elijah on and off pretty frequently. While Chris was in jail for assaulting Nicole, their visits with him stopped for a while. Nicole was refusing to bring him over, she said.
And would you agree that during that time period, there were holidays?
Yeah.
There were birthdays?
Yes.
Of the family?
Mm-hmm.
And Elijah missed spending those holidays and birthdays with you and Angel, right?
Yes.
Would you agree that made Angel furious?
It upset him.
Okay. And he would talk about that, correct?
Yes.
And he was visibly upset when he talked about that. Isn't that true?
Yes.
After Chris returned home in July 2019, they saw Elijah more regularly again. She said Chris and Nicole were co-parenting together. She was asked again about the excavator.
What was the purpose of having the excavator?
To dig up some stumps, tree stumps, and knock down some trees that were dead.
Okay. And had those trees been dead for a while?
Yes.
Okay. It wasn't just recently that the trees became dead or their limbs were on the ground. It had been there a while. Do you agree?
She said she also believed they were using it to dig for a septic tank. On cross with Angel's attorney, Wanda looked at the surveillance photos and said she can't say Angel is the driver. When asked if it's his truck, she said it looks a lot like his, but she can't say for sure. Who does the laundry? Angel's attorney asked. She said they both do.
Back in October of 2019, did you both do it then?
I can't remember.
Okay. And around the time that this happened, did you see any bloody clothing, shoes, or anything like that to indicate that someone had been cut or stabbed or anything like that?
No.
Wanda reiterated that she saw Angel operating the excavator on Sunday, the day before Nicole went missing. She said he was using it to pull stumps out. There were quite a few stumps and dead things that needed to be dug up on the property, she said. In the last episode, you heard about testimony from a man named Dustin Gonzalez. Dustin Gonzalez claims that he shared a cell with Chris after Chris was in jail for attacking Nicole in 2018. Dustin said that Chris and Angel helped to bond him out of jail on the condition that he would plant drugs in Nicole's car and then call the police on her. He said Chris was hoping that she would lose custody of Elijah. He also testified under oath that Angel had made comments about wanting Nicole to just disappear and telling Dustin, "I have money." Well, Dustin wasn't the only fellow inmate of Chris's during that time period to come forward. According to a correctional officer who testified at trial, Chris and Dustin were housed together in a cell at one point. Two other men, Johnny Medina and Hector Massis, didn't share a cell with Chris, but they were all housed in the same unit with the same common area. Johnny Medina testified first. He told the court that he and Chris didn't share a cell but were in the same pod together. He said he and another inmate were sitting at a table in the common area when Chris walked over. He had just hung up the phone with someone.
At a certain point, he finishes the phone call, and then what happens?
Me and Cox are talking. He just walked up and said he had a proposition and that he can make our witnesses disappear.
Were those his exact words?
Yes.
Do you recall how either you or Cox responded to that statement?
We laughed it off and he just walked off. We thought it was awkward, like random.
Had you and Christopher and Cox, before that, ever talked about ways to get rid of witnesses in your case?
No.
Did you and Chris and Cox ever vent to each other about your significant others?
Yes.
He said his impression was that Chris was jealous and possessive over Nicole.
If he couldn't have her, no one could.
Did he ever suspect or say anything to you that led you to believe he suspected that Nicole was dating someone else?
Yeah, he felt that she was messing with like another man or something.
Did he have an opinion about this?
He didn't like it.
Now, I asked you earlier if you were surprised to learn that Miss Montalvo was deceased. Did Chris ever speak specifically about wanting to hurt Nicole?
Yes.
And what did you hear him say?
Said he wanted, sorry for my words, he said he wanted to kill that bitch plenty of times.
Did he say why he wanted to kill Nicole?
He felt she was cheating on him, wanted custody of his son, and I believe paperwork from a divorce.
He was asked if he was present at the jail when Chris got served paperwork, and he said yes, that Chris was angry and crying, and that he held the paperwork with his fists balled up. He said Chris would talk about killing Nicole a lot. He couldn't recall a day since he received that paperwork where he didn't mention it. He was asked if Chris ever talked about specific ways to kill her.
I just remember something about a ping pong ball with some fluid in regards to putting it in the gas tank and that would blow up the car, and something about lime juice to decompose of a dead body.
And did he speak with you about these things and ask your opinion?
He asked if I believed those things could work.
He said he later heard that Chris was responsible for bonding Dustin out of jail so that Dustin could go take care of Nicole. On cross with Chris's attorney, Johnny acknowledged that he had asked for leniency and that he was facing up to 9 years in prison, but ended up receiving probation. In order to get probation, the state attorney had to agree to it. Johnny also said he never reported Chris's threats to anyone, and that he had seen the case on the news after he was released and had Googled it. Hector Massis was another inmate who got to know Chris while in jail.
When I get out, I'm going to kill this bitch.
What was his demeanor like when he said it?
He was mad.
He said he never spoke with Chris personally about Nicole. It's just what he overheard. Before they rested, the state played a recorded phone call between Chris and Angel from when Chris was in jail for assaulting Nicole. Chris tells his dad that he needs him to do him a favor. That, quote, "There's somebody who's going to help me out with what's going on," he said, "but they gotta be bonded out." In his closing arguments, the prosecutor spoke about the text message Angel received on his phone that he said was not from Nicole.
This is bogus. It is made up, fabrication, lie. And why is this necessary? Because he had something to hide. You know that that text message was fake because of where it was sent from.
As you'll recall from earlier, cell phone data showed that it was sent from near the Rivera house. He said everyone who commits a crime like this always makes a mistake. He said Angel made a big one.
No matter how much they plan, no matter how much they try, there's always a mistake somewhere. Because it's hard to cover all these bases and to have a person just vanish. So the logical mistake that Angel Rivera made was telling people he got the message on Monday and then not going to pick Elijah up on Tuesday. Because according to him, nothing was wrong except that Nicole had left and asked him to care for Elijah. And we know he cared for Elijah. So why would he not pick him up at school on Tuesday? And the answer is obvious. Because he needed other people to see she was not arriving. He needed other people to believe that she had left town. He needed the staff at Harmony Community School to show up so he could say, oh yeah, you know, she left and she's scattered and I don't know what she's doing, but I don't know where she is. And that's exactly the demeanor that Crystal Bunn described when he showed up on Tuesday. There is no logically squaring that circle. He made a mistake, and it shows what he did.
He said Chris and Angel both dumped Nicole's car. Both men's cell phones pinged on the same towers, and Chris's GPS on his ankle monitor shows he was there too. Conveniently, it was on his way to his appointment with his probation officer. He said both Angel and Chris started planning Nicole's murder a year earlier, in October 2018.
And you know that because you heard the testimony of Dustin Gonzalez? Again, how do you believe Dustin Gonzalez? Because every witness and piece of evidence corroborated exactly what he said, including the call between the two co-conspirators, doing exactly what he said they did.
In her closing arguments, Chris's attorney said the prosecution's theory of the case hasn't been proven. For one, she said there's no way Nicole was murdered at the Rivera home.
Let's hold on. If the state is suggesting Nicole was murdered and dismembered on the Hickson property, where is the blood? The state could come up here and create this amazing story. Look these two together. But where's the evidence? Where's all the blood? Is the state suggesting that these people are professionals? Where's the time?
She disputed the state's timeline of the dumping of the car. She said if Nicole's car had been dumped on that Tuesday morning, her dome light wouldn't have still been on when it was found 2 days later. She posted a photo of Chris from just after he was arrested for Nicole's murder and pointed out that he had no scratches or bruises, no injuries on his body. She said there was no evidence he was involved in a murder and dismemberment. As for Angel, she said they never got any pictures of him after his arrest, aside from a close-up of his face. She said you can't see his arms or hands to know if they are injured. But Angel's attorney placed the blame squarely on Chris, telling the jury that Chris stood to gain substantially, that he wanted full custody of Elijah, and that if Nicole were dead, he would get it. In the end, it took the jury 90 minutes to convict both Angel and Chris for Nicole's murder. In July 2021, Nicole's loved ones returned to court to give victim impact statements before a judge sentenced the now convicted murderers. Christina Montalvo, Nicole's sister, said sometimes she feels like the grieving process is never ending, and that when people ask her what happened, she tells them Nicole passed away from domestic violence. She can't bear to say that her estranged husband and father of her children and his father murdered her. Nicole's twin brother said he would always feel the loss on his birthday, the day he shared with Nicole. He named his baby daughter after her to carry on her spirit. He said it grieves him to know that his little girl would never get to meet her aunt, her namesake. Nicole's family also said this in front of the judge. Nicole's death hadn't happened in isolation. She was the victim of domestic violence. She suffered at the hands of an entire family, Chris, Angel, and Wanda, who manipulated her and hurt her. After the family's emotional words, Circuit Judge Keith Karsten rendered his punishment.
I cannot ignore the brutality of your efforts to cover up that crime and the pain that brought the family as they desperately searched for Nicole Montalvo. As to Mr. Otero Rivera, it is impossible for the court to ignore the fact that you were wearing an ankle monitor for violence on Nicole Montalvo at the time that you were convicted for her murder. As to count one, murder in the second degree, you are sentenced to life in prison.
The judge ordered Angel and Chris, father and son, to spend life in prison. And that's all for this episode. As always, I'd love to know what you think about this case. Let me know by joining the conversation on Instagram @CourtJunkie, by tweeting me @CourtJunkiePod, or you can email me at podcast@courtjunkie.com. This episode was written by Gabrielle Russon, with some additions by me. To hear these episodes without the ads or to check out additional Court Junkie bonus episodes, go to courtjunkie.com/support, which will redirect you to my Patreon page. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.